land monopolies created to promote the sale of suburban housing, to the highway system that enforced automobility and sprawl, to light rail lines that have been a vehicle for political opportunity, we argue that regimes of mobility in LA have never been devised democratically with the will of everyday working people. So today, LA Metro has some of the poorest ridership in the country. The median household income of Metro riders is just over $19,000 a year. And on the other hand, the pandemic has demonstrated how essential the labor of transit operators is to the public transit system. In the past 2 years, transit operators have carried an extreme load and managed a hostile work environment. So Marxist urbanist Henri Lefebvre coined the term the right to the city, which can be defined as the right to reclaim public spaces, public participation in the city, and the right to housing and basic amenities, including mobility. And since the dawn of industrialization under racial capitalism, urbanization has been inherently unequal across the intersections of race, class, and gender. Contemporary neoliberalism subjects our public transit systems to austerity and disinvestment with widespread lack of service and reliability. Simultaneously, agencies pour increasing funds into police contracts and surveillance for fare enforcement, disproportionately affecting riders of color. In consideration of these political and socioeconomic forces, transit remains a site of contestation for the right to a city for those most excluded in our society. The state of transportation planning today is disconnected from the needs of transit-dependent riders. Much of the mainstream concern of transportation planning has been focused on cost cutting, affecting essential services, privatization, and market-based solutions. After the racial justice uprising of 2020, transportation agencies have been scrambling to address issues of racial equity without properly addressing why these inequities exist in the first place. Equity is not simply an abstraction to strive for. We cannot diversity, equity, and inclusion our way into a just transit system. And the depoliticization of the cause of these inequities is deeply violent. So why is it that transit planners have such a challenging time connecting to real issues of inequity? What are the real mechanisms that control transportation decision-making? How do we build collective power to reclaim our right to a just transportation system? We situate ourselves in a present defined by counter-revolution, as Eric Mann has said. COVID-19 intensified all existing inequities in society, while climate change presents itself as an ongoing and future variable that will impact the most marginalized in our society. It is imperative to develop democratic control of public transit and a system that puts workers and riders first. Our panel today includes the perspectives of the Bus Riders Union, the experiences of unhoused folks on transit, fare abolition advocates, and labor within the transit system. Convening these perspectives together is necessary for a holistic understanding of a democratized public transit system. I will now hand it off to Avilash and Keenan, who are our moderators for today's event. Thank you.
Hello. Ooh, I feel like Celine Dion. Joining us, my name is Avilash Bola, and I'm a first-year Master's of Public Policy student.
Hey everybody, my name is Keenan, and I'm a first-year Master's of Urban Planning student.
So for our first panel, we're going to be a conversation with Oscar Zarate, Channing Martinez, and Theo Henderson about the issues of transit-dependent riders and how we can build a transit system that works, that really supports the needs of riders and centers them. So our panel will go till about 6:40 because we started late. And to start us off, Channing, would you like to give a 5-minute introduction of who you are and the work that you do?
So, hey everyone, I'm Channing Martinez. I'm the Director of Organizing for the Strategy Center. I've been involved with Bus Riders Union for 15 years and I joined that fight in around 2007. The first time Metro was raising fares after the Bus Riders Union consent decree. And here we are 15 years later, and the bus service is as worse, if not worse than it was back in 2007, and as worse, if not worse than it was in 1996 when the Bus Riders Union decided to take them to court and win a settlement. So I'll get straight to the point that we've been on the bus organizing. They've cut 1 million hours of service. They've, as I'm sorry, I can't remember your name, as Andra just said, they've had police contracts. We've gone through all of their processes of organizing, gone to even take over boulevards. We have gone to their board meetings and we've met with them. And they've just not kept their promises. And to be frank, as an organizer, I'm breaking my brain on what to do, and I don't fully know what to do. But one thing that I'm doing, which is I'm going to introduce a new tactic, is that we're just going to go for their money and take away their budget. So we're launching a new campaign today to call on Pete Buttigieg, who's the Department of Transportation Secretary, to stop Metro's anti-racism, anti-Black politics by cutting off all of their funds until they stop every single anti-Black policy that they're doing. That means free fares. That means getting rid of the Black codes, the codes of conduct that we call the Black codes. That means no patrolling of police. That means, what else am I forgetting? 1,000 zero-emission buses. That means increasing the service hours. And the thing I want to get to right away is that we both have a flyer, which is going to be coming around, and we have a letter that we want each person to sign to send directly to the Department of Transportation and to Pete Buttigieg to say that we want to work with him directly, and we want him to come to LA to meet with the bus riders union, put the MTA under court trusteeship, and then make sure that 3 BRU board members are on the committee that control that trusteeship. So I want to read just a short piece of the letter so you guys get it. So it says, "Dear Secretary of Transportation Pete Buttigieg, we are writing to you to immediately cut off all federal funding for the Los Angeles MTA, also known as LA Metro. We are also asking you to come to Los Angeles to meet with the bus riders union and work out a plan for a permanent receivership over the MTA, with BRU having co-powers and the Department of Transportation with your immediate supervision monitoring MTA's progress towards pre-agreed upon objectives. Immediately appoint 3 members of the bus riders union of their choosing to the Metro board with voice and vote as civil rights monitors. In that the BRU has filed 3 major civil rights complaints with your Department of Transportation over more than a decade. Had those complaints been accepted, and each time the Department of Transportation sided with the MTA, please investigate their civil rights violations in your own civil rights department. And that is why we must deal directly with the bus riders union." And so, the demands. We have a flyer. We want folks to sign on as soon as possible, and that's the work that we're carrying out.
That was amazing. What an organizer to start off. An introduction with a call to action. That's amazing. My name is Oscar. It's a pleasure to be here at UCLA. I see many friends, a couple enemies. We're all friends. Introduction, who am I? I'm from Compton. That's where I grew up. Well, actually, I was born in Mexico. We immigrated here when I was 5. I went to UC Santa Barbara, I'm sorry, not UCLA. And I think from the very beginning of just being a brown person, working class, undocumented, like your political activation is almost necessary for your survival, right? And I think I knew that from a very young age, and it kind of flourished a little bit more at UC Santa Barbara, organizing with my fellow peers, as I'm sure some of you are doing now. And thankfully, the universe brought me back to my community and working with an organization called SAGE, Strategic Access for a Just Economy. SAGE has been working in South Central and the Figueroa corridor since 1995. SAGE is as old as me. Like when I was born, SAGE was created. And their main mission is to harness community power, community empowerment leadership to reach economic justice goals. One of them being obviously transportation justice. A lot of our members come from South Central. They have a plethora of identities, not only working class, but transit dependent. And the way that SAGE works is that each year, at the end of the year, we have a asamblea where our members choose what campaigns they want to do. And in 2019, they selected fareless transit, eliminating fares on the system. And it was, I remember because it was funny because one of our members was like, y'all crazy. He didn't believe it. He thought it was preposterous, but obviously as Channing highlighted, there's been a lot of work done on it and we've been able to do a lot of work since, obviously with fares being suspended temporarily during the pandemic. A lot of people think it's because of the kindness of Metro. Hell no. It was because people organized and they were like, hey, there's a dangerous ass virus. Let's prioritize life, you know? And it's really sad to see Metro kind of swaying away from that. But it's not a big surprise. Like, who are the Metro board members? Like, when was the last time Eric Garcetti rode a bus? I'd really be interested in seeing that, or any one of those people on that board. And yeah, I think that's just kind of me, an introduction of what SAGE does, and I'm eager for more conversation. Go ahead, Theo.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening. Good evening. Can anyone hear me? My name is Theo Henderson, and I am the host and creator of a podcast called Unhoused. And because of that is the reason why I'm here, because many of the Unhoused community members rely on the transportation system as it is. Unfortunately, we have had over-policing and an aggressive stance that is usually taken on unhoused people. And case in point, if you look today, if you're going to some of the transportation spots, you will see unhoused people utilizing the charging stations, and you have aggressive security staff that tell them they can't be loitering. If you go on to certain spaces like the downtown area, you'll see a lot of litter around. There's no loitering. Those are geared toward unhoused people. You see where you're traveling on the train and you have to go to the restroom. There are no restrooms, with the exception of Union Station, and they have weaponized it to only select the places that you go. If you go into Union Station and you are tired and you wish to sit down, you will be faced with a guard or some guards preventing you from sitting down through the Amtrak, and you have to produce a ticket. So this aggressiveness has been seeping with the unhoused community for many years. Many people complain about unhoused people in various stages of undress or distress and lack of showers or appropriate things to help. This is the reason why I chose to be on this committee, to awaken people to understand that when we do riderless transit, it helps with the aggressiveness of the cops. It helps with defraying that. It helps them from getting the security guards to run off on house people. It gets them from not standing at the fairs asking tap cards. So it is a very vital of that. When I created Unhoused, my first few weeks being displaced, I spent all night on the 720 bus. And the 720 bus goes 24 hours from one end of the city to the other, and you're able to get a couple of weeks before it gets dislodged, and you go back and do the same thing until the early hours of the day. Conversely, it was also my awakening to a lot of the unhoused realities, why they use it for the night for safety. For example, majority of the bus riders were women wearing very overlong clothes or bulky clothes to avoid the harms and the crimes that happen to unhoused women by housed people where there is no redress. So this issue is a layered onion. It's more than for us, we're doing direct action, but it's also where Metro could take the lead in creating creative, innovative solutions to help our growing community. Because as horrible as the system is, working class people have a role to play in siloing their concerns and ignoring the vulnerable, why they need it as well. They are writers too. So thank you.
Thank you so much for the intros, everybody. So we're just going to get into the first question. Why is fare-free transit important? And why did Metro reverse fare-free transit despite it working so well? And yeah, just go ahead.
Okay, cool. Very good question. I love it. Why is fare free transit important? I think one is just reclaiming what a public good is. Like what is a public good? A public good is free. And I think sadly, because of just the way our society is, how capitalistic it is, we're always trying to privatize things that should be public. And sadly, public transportation is one of those. And yeah, I think it's about reclaiming what a public good is. I also think we need to uplift our working class people, especially during this time. I think a lot of people think about fareless as an economic relief. It can also be an economic stimulus, right? A lot of people are saving that money. I think on average, like working class people spend $40 to $100 on Metro in a month. Imagine what people can do without having to spend that money on transit. So for me, that's why it's important. It provides an essential relief and stimulus during this time. And it's also what we need to do, reclaiming a public good.
I would like to rejoin and re-clarify my comments about why it is also not only just for the working, it should also be for the unhoused community as well. Too often than not, we have been shunted by society, even among our communities, because of us being without a home, and that makes us seem like we are left without it. People use this place, people use the transportation for a myriad of reasons. One, for safety. Secondly, to get to places where the cost will be too much for them if they're on general relief and they're having to count the pennies. Secondly, it's most importantly, it is a connecting tool where other services could be available. For example, restrooms, public restrooms, where we have gotten to the point we've removed public restrooms. We removed showers. At one point in time, there were showers in the Union Station for Amtrak. And how I know, I used to sneak in going on those. And once they started seeing unhoused people sneak in to do that, they dismantled it and refurbished and recreated something different. So that is really what the aim of it is. It is attacking poor people, but also pitting other poor people against poorer people. And I think we need to really re-examine those kind of things as well.
I think the first, there you go. I think the first thing you got to do when you think about free public transportation is to stop and realize that it's not about whether they pay for the transportation or not. It's not about, it's not about any of the basic needs, right? It really is about how do you build an agency that takes up all of the funds of the city, that then somehow acts almost as an ATM for the city. But then even on top of that, which, this gets into also the argument around slavery, right? A lot of people think that slavery was an economic system, and it was, but it was not about slavery. It was because they hated Black people so badly that they created an entire system to use their bodies to then use that for their own good. They hated Black people, right? And, the cutting edge issue for me is that if this were in the 1960s and it had been 15 years of Black people being ticketed every year, the Black community would be outrageous. They would be burning down the fucking city. And they're not doing that right now, right? So that is the situation right now. Black people have been 50% of the tickets for the last 15 years. We got Black elected officials that are in office that ain't doing shit about it, right? And, to be frank, free public transportation isn't about free public transportation. It's about how do you then take this Black community that's no longer your slaves, right? That's no longer your workers, and push them out of every single agency, every single entity of society, right? And that's why Black people are still 50% of tickets. That's why no politicians want to do anything about it, because it is really about the genocide against the Black community. So free public transportation is only the entry point of which we're talking about, to talk about the whole larger struggle of how do you fight an imperialist agency in an imperialist country.
Thank you for that. So this is related a lot to what you're talking about in terms of services being taken away. Yet Metro's budget has tripled from 3.1 billion in 1993 to 8.8 billion dollar budget that was approved, I think, just a few weeks ago. So given that the budget has exploded, have services to transit-dependent riders improved in the past few decades? Why or why not?
If I may tackle that one, I disagree. It has gotten worse. And I want to point out something that's very clear. The reason why there's such a dichotomy between the Black issues as well as the Black community, and particularly the unhoused community, because we have a pecking order. And it is okay if you're a certain economic strata and you happen to be, some of us have been unfortunately falling into the gaze of white supremacy as agents. But the bottom line is this, that most of the writers and most of the housed writers are in agreement with how to delineate toward unhoused people. Black unhoused people are 3 to 4 times likely to be arrested, more so than even housed Blacks. They're more than 3 to 4 times likely to be ticketed. I've gotten many of the tickets for fare evasion. For example, if you catch it in the middle of the night, the cops will run in because there's no observation, there's no notice, and they will target unhoused people, Black unhoused people that are asleep. So in as much, they will also make sure that they run them out of the system, out of the city, of the platforms where they are charging phones, or if they have a mental crisis, or if the conversation is always used to have a heavy foot on the neck of unhoused people, Black and brown to be sure, but they definitely are putting their foot on the Black and housed and Black and brown unhoused people. There's no doubt about it.
I want to touch a little bit on what you said, Theo. I think it's absolutely like fairs are a tactic to pit people against each other. And I see it in my own organizing. At Sage, we organize a lot with monolingual, Spanish-speaking senoras and senoras in the neighborhood. And as you can imagine, a lot of them hold very not productive perspectives on house people. Mm-hmm. And I think it's almost a class thing, right? Like renters divided, pitted against unhoused people. That shouldn't happen. I think fairs are one thing that really accentuate that or emphasize that. And I think like a couple of weeks ago, one of our members got on the bus and a bus driver called her, she couldn't pay it. He called her sinvergüenza. I don't know if people, it's a great insult in Spanish, it means shameless, right? And I think, yeah, there's this kind of just weird mentality about people that can't pay, people that can't pay rent, people that can't pay their necessities, and somehow they're less valuable. And to kind of finish up, if I can touch a little bit, why did they go back to fairs? Obviously because these people on the board can't relate to the lived experience of people riding the bus, right? They rather prioritize 5% of the budget than give people the ability to ride their public transportation system without having to pay a fare. They rather prioritize, I don't know, it's like $500 million over. So, I mean, how many wages do you think people lost during the pandemic, right? How many more people are unhoused on the system? And we want to prioritize $500 million. I just looked at this. And I think that kind of indicates why since 1993, the metro budget has tripled, but the service has not tripled, and I think it's because of this, right? Because of the people who control the metro board and kind of their apathy to meet the needs of their bus riders, anyone who uses the transit, and kind of prioritizing things that, again, you would prioritize if you see transit as sort of like an investment, right? They prioritize highways. Isn't it? I'm like, Metro spends so much on highways and they're a public transportation system. What in the world is that? So I think it's just a whack prioritization. And yeah, I would love to see something that Channing mentioned in the letter of the writing people, just community control, right? Of the public, like, I would love to read that letter more to kind of see what their vision is of that control. But yeah, giving transit riders control of the system.
Okay. I think there's multiple reasons. I think all of the reasons Theo just mentioned, all the reasons that Oscar mentioned. But I want to give you two or four reasons. One is that it is retaliation against the Liberty Bus Riders Union. In '96, we sued the hell out of them in the landmark lawsuit. Everyone that's in law school that's studying transportation reads about the Bus Riders Union lawsuit. Everyone that's in almost every university that's studying anything remotely to law, remotely to Title VI, to civil rights legislation, is reading about the case of the Bus Riders Union versus the MTA. And so how do you stop a working class, Black, Latinx, women, LGBTQ force from actually taking over and taking up the system? And one way is you stop them by taking away their service and driving out all of the members and driving all of the members into like not just the working poor, but like knowing houselessness, right? So that's one, is they are trying to stop a working class Black, Latinx, APW. The second one, the reason why they do it and they're able to do it is because, to be frank, you might not like this, institutions like UCLA, institutions that have transportation departments in which that Metro has deep roots into, they have roots with the professors, right? And they're here on your campus recruiting you. You might go into MTA and you might go into their fields thinking you're going to somehow change their field from the inside out. The reason why they're able to continue doing this shit is because they have big institutions that are actually supporting it, right? It's like one campaign I learned about, a campaign a few years ago Eric was a part of, back in the 1970s, right? The University of Columbia was making military grade weapons. They were doing studies and delivering it to the military, right? They're able to do it because these institutions are allowing them to do it and helping to do it. So the more that we move to what are you going to do to stop Metro within this institution, kicking them off campus, making sure they can't speak on them, making sure that professors don't actually speak with the Metro, and figuring out what you're going to do with those professors that do. The more you can do that, the more that we can do to stop them. Great.
Next question. LA Metro is nearing the end of a more than $700 million multi-agency policing contracts with the LAPD, the LA Sheriff's Department, and Long Beach PD. We have elected officials who regularly villainize transit riders and subsequently call for more cuts on public transit. How do you push back against the narrative that more policing on transit increases overall road safety?
We don't have to look any further into what happened in New York. I've worked deeply into the Unhoused crisis. I can tell you New York and Los Angeles in particular have set off a wave of aggressive police actions. Unfortunately, Michelle Go lost her life to a person that was experiencing crisis, and the person had to be Black and unhoused. And as such, that happened was Eric Adams, who is a Black mayor, a police mayor, unleashed my unhoused friends have told me it was totally, they were literally dragging unhoused Black people on the ground to arrest them that had nothing to do with any crime, but just was staying, trying to survive under COVID-19 and aggressive inclement weather. To this end, Los Angeles has met the call as well. NIMBYs and working class NIMBYs and housed people have worked together and said that the LA Metro is unsafe. So what did they do? They met that call, and every time we come on the train, even though this contract is ending, you see them everywhere. And when I say everywhere, I'm talking about 10 to 15 cops running into the areas, looking for if you have a tap card, particularly at the unhoused at night, because it's easier to do your dirt at night than you can do it during the day because someone has the temerity to ask a question or start videoing. I have a podcast called We Unhoused, but I also do live streams. You can look no further and see how they're constantly attacking on my live streams, Black unhoused people just there. And they know that they're going to get away with it because they have the support of Metro as well as some of the housed NIMBYs.
It's a good question. As I'm hearing Theo and Channing, I just want to say that like it's so hard to organize when you're working class or you're unhoused. You feel me? I think like a lot of the time, a lot of your energy, a lot of your energy is spent on just surviving. And I think it's incredibly hard to organize. And I think I can say I'm very privileged. I think we're all very privileged to be able to sit here and talk about these issues while there's people getting ticketed on the metro line or on how people experiencing state sanctioned violence. So that's just something that came to mind as I was hearing these gentlemen speak. In terms of the question, like, why are we continuing to experience a ballooning police contract? I think it's because, in my opinion, we've become super reliant on using police to solve everything. Someone is having a mental crisis on the line, police. Someone can't pay their fare, police. Someone can't find housing, police. You know, so I think we have to break away from that. I also think like in my community, I'll speak particularly about like where I grew up, a lot of people still believe that cops solve things. They don't. You know, I think police come and something has already happened. You know, police are not like magical fairies that appear right as crime happens. Like, here's the police. No, you know, and then there's this other idea that police deter. I don't know about that. Like, I don't know about that. And I think the real thing that stops crime, quote unquote, is resources, right? Resources like housing, resources like mental counseling, you know? And I think the critical problem here is that because of this mentality of over-reliance on police, we see it reflected on budgets of the metro, budgets of city council. I don't know who said this, but budgets reflect values. And I think sadly our society has valued police and violence, and it's reflected on the budget. And yeah.
I'll be honest with you. Policing is a 400-year-old institution. There is absolutely no way that, you know, just having, if we only said this thing, if we only said that thing, that it's going to change the narrative, because that's just really not what it's about. They just don't give a fuck about our lives and they're trying to kill us. And in the middle of an imperialist society where folks are being hunted down, the question isn't what is the line to say that's going to combat police. The question is, how do we build our own machine to take on the machine? And I think that's what we're doing at the Bus Riders Union. We have a strategy and so movement center. We have an organizing office. We have a bookstore with the 40 most important books to read in a lifetime to become a revolutionary organizer. We have a film theater because we know that our folks are being organized through film. You can go on our website and read my whole review about how Black Panther is destructive to the Black community, as an example, right? You know, and so I guess the real call to action, just bringing back the call to action is, you know, we got to build our own system. We got to build our own machine, and we have to be placed on how should I say it? We have to be placed on the same level to talk directly with the Metro to the public, right? And one of those things, I'll end with this. You know, one of our most successful tactics was me running for city council in 2019, 2020. And, you know, for the first time ever in our history, we were on the same panel as Mark Lee Thomas, who was a supervisor. And he tried to talk about, oh, and I fought for free public transportation. I got the mic last, and I got the last word, and I got to say, actually, no, you didn't. I remember you talking to us at the Metro Board and walking on your high horses and on your crown, acting like you're big thing and saying you're our strategic or tactical valor, some bullshit like that, right? I got to be on the same level as him, and people actually heard our point, right, in ways that they could not hear. So here's my deal. One idea that me and Eric have been talking about is one thing you can do is why not invite and organize a debate between the bus riders union and the MTA leadership. We want to debate directly with CEO Stephanie Wiggs. We want to debate directly with Holly Mitchell, debate directly with Hilda Solis, and all of these folks who have immense power, and they have immense marketing power, and they get to speak over us. And the only way that we're going to even begin to talk about policing in a fair way is if we're on the same levels.
Can I add something real quick? I'm sure you weren't saying this, but I just want to emphasize, I think it's incredibly important to have conversations. We should not minimize the power of conversations, because at least for me, like, revolution, I think, begins inside. And sadly enough, a lot of working class people, a lot of people, especially where I grew up in Compton, Seattle, Huntington Park, still hold not so good beliefs and understandings of policing and capitalism and all that. And I just don't believe, like, I want to caution against vanguardism. I don't know if folks are familiar with that. Like, I think a sustainable, comprehensive revolution must bring everyone along. And for me, like, I think it's as important as it is to speak to Holly Mitchell and the MTA. I also want to speak to that senora who thinks that that person who's unhoused on the bus system is a problem. You know what I mean? So I want to make sure that everyone understands having conversations is important. And I think it's more important when it's hardest. And I think for us to have any long-term impact to really shift and move the institution's metro into the direction that we want to see it, we have to talk to everyone, and we have to bring everyone along, and we have to talk to our people.
And I want to add one more quick thing. Gil Scott Heron said something when he was talking about the revolution that will not be televised. He says the revolution begins in the mind. And from an educator's standpoint, we must be the education force to be able to educate or deprogram people into believing these harmful things. We could match with the best of them, and we have in many respects. But I'm going to reiterate, say, if we don't educate or deprogram ourselves from the anti-Blackness that we all have, even Black people have, the anti-unhousing that we have, then it's going to be, we're just trading in one powerful situation for another. So we have to do an aggressive education campaign all around.
My argument was invoked, so I should say something. I think you both know that that's not at all what I was talking about. We're in the middle of the UCLA institution in which there's always conversations about what political line can I study and write about, write a report and think that it's going to do something. The bus riders union, as you know, has been organizing for the last 25 years. We are the best organizers of Black and Latinx bus riders. That is why we have a Ricardo Zalata that went up and pointed it to Basics Metro, because we trained them in the art and organizing and transforming organizing. That's why you have Adela Bonner, who when we were taking over the streets on Wilshire and Western Boulevard, and someone was beeping, she went over to him and cussed his ass out and said, you want another piece of me, right? We train the best organized society. In the context of a university, I am saying, please don't leave this room and go start a master's thesis or write a study and go deliver it to the Metro and think that that study is going to change anything. It's not. Please leave this room and join the bus riders union and join organizing groups that are actually on the streets organizing and setting the cutting edge of the organizing.
Thank you for that. I really appreciate just bringing into kind of conversation the fact that we really do need to have transformative conversations with people, but part of that conversation is moving people to action, right? No one's gonna come, straight out of here and be like, I'm gonna go cuss out a police officer. You don't, that's like, you gotta be kind of wild back. But there's a lot of power to having conversations with people and empowering others to really understand.
And I want to say, reaching out to the groups, and it's wonderful that excellent work that Channing that you've done, but also what I've noticed in the in-house community, that conversation does falter a little bit, and I do believe that if we want to have the greatest impact in organizing, we have organizing spaces. You see us all the time speaking out for housing, say no to campus services, not sweeps as well, that we should be part of those conversations as well. And we should be included because unhoused people have value and dignity too. We don't need to have a job to be considered a human being.
That's right. That's right. I'll add something. Yes, please clap. Just to add to what you were saying, Theo, like exactly, I went to one of your events in front of Los Angeles City Hall, and it was the most transformative, like, of course, I read about what's happening with the Unhoused on Instagram, whatever. And, at the Compton Tennis Union, we organized with the Unhoused in Compton. But to see, and I think it was like a visual for all the people that died, that's incredibly impactful. And it's like transform, like there's a saying, you have to kill the capitalists in your mind. You have to kill the white supremacists in your mind.
And the police.
And the police. And those,
what we say.
and those kind of events, believe it or not, help in doing that. Like when I went to that, the first thing I thought about when I left is how can I bring the members organizing with Sage to that event so they can really understand what's going on and really feel it, right? Because that's something else. Like, I really felt it when I was there, hearing everyone speak their stories, their experience, and I think we need more of that. We need more of that. Sometimes like action is very important. It's the goal, but sometimes at least I'll talk about myself. When I'm focused on action, like it can be very like blinding, and I think we need time to kind of sit still, reflect, and kind of analyze like what is driving, what is underpinning all of this organizing into action. How can we make it as accessible and inclusive to the people who sadly, something about this system, I mean, in my opinion, it indoctrinates you. When I was going to school in Linwood, like, this kind of model minority myth is propagated. And I think like, those type of events help you deprogram. And living in a Prince of members, so let's get it.
All right, so it sounds like we have a coalition starting. I hope that you all can join. So just to kind of forecast out a little bit, we're gonna have some time for audience questions. So while you think about that, I have a last question from us to the panelists. What is your vision of people's transit in LA and what does that mean?
I'll take it and shut up. We are in one of the major focuses of our society is that solutions never come from the state. From the unhoused, I'm just gonna say from the unhoused, any damn time that people that are unhoused create a solution, the city hijacks it and criminalize it. We talked about Caesar Hotel, here they come with jail cell and putting people into carceral solution. We talk about a tiny home, they make a tiny shed. Anytime we talk about a solution, they are always trying to use some kind of a spin to it, which we already know what the ulterior purpose is. But the idea is that it's always negative. But if I want to see a different writer's experience, I want to see the mutual aid come for the unhoused community because they are obviously using this. And they obviously need services in order for them to be established into society, respectfully with dignity. So many of the unhoused have the lack of restroom access, people or laundry access. On all of these services that should be on a site where they should have different places where they don't have to worry about them being shamed because they are not able to utilize those services, to charge their phones, to connect with one another in order to get other services. Safe injection sites, because no matter how we want to ignore it, we're undergoing an opiate crisis, and we're not just saying no, it's just not them getting. Every house person should know how to be able to use Narcan and understand the importance of fentanyl strips and how to make sure that if someone has these crises of overdose, that we know how to save their life. Because I can't convince me when you go home that you don't know anybody that's not using drugs or don't know someone in the family that's not using drugs. So this skill is just as important as CPI. So after saying all that, let me shut up.
I love when you go friends. It gives me time. Man, when I get like, who cares what my vision is, to be honest, like, let's see what the vision is of the people riding the buses, and the majority of people who are transit dependent. Like, who cares what I think? But if you're gonna ask me what I think we should have Metro as a sanctuary. You know, like I would love to see street vendors on the station. You know, like, and that's it goes back to what I was saying about reclaiming the public good. Like, public goods are spaces of community. You know, like when I was growing up in Mexico, one of the few memories I have, I was very small, but one of the few memories I have is riding the bus with my mom to the beach. I was born in Acapulco. Acapulco was a port city. And I remember taking the bus to the beach, and it was a vibe. For lack of better terms, like there were so many people on it, they were very friendly. I remember like a rooster being on it, that was kind of sick. And I'm just like, how can we return to that, right? How can we return to a place where Metro feels like a sanctuary, where everyone's included, regardless of your income or whatever, your ability to pay? And how can we actually make it feel like when you go there, you feel like you're in community, like when you go to the library, you know, or when you take the bus, you know? So that's kind of my vision. Yeah.
So used to passing like that is COVID. No, you can't change you can't change the bus system and have a vision for the bus system without having a vision for the entire city and the entire country and the entire world. And you're living in a world where the United States literally controls everything. I know a lot of folks, a lot of our members and a lot of my family members are always like, oh, it's so stressful here. I think I'm just gonna move out of the United States. And I hate to bust their bubble, but oh, you're gonna move there? Did you know that the US has a military base there that's controlling the government? Did you know that this is going on there, that the US is controlling, right? And so until we are able to move to a framework in which we challenge the entire United States government, meaning closing down every single one of their 800 or so bases, meaning pulling them out of the United Nations and getting the entire United Nations to stand against them, right? Meaning reparations for the third world, especially African countries, until we are able to basically dismantle everything in this country that was basically seized from the rest of the world. There is no way to then have, a miracle and, shining bus system, because you will get on that bus system and feel really great and then get back off that bus system and the police will be right there waiting to arrest you, right? And so in that sense, that is why we're both having a opinion about things that we want to see, right? Obviously, we want 5,000 zero-emission buses. Obviously, we want the fares to be free, right? Obviously, we want no police on the metro buses and trains, cleaning 24/7, every 20 minutes, if you ask me, blah, blah, blah. But in order to have that, you have to challenge the entire system, the entire.
And thank you so much. I think we have time for maybe one or two questions. If someone wanted to be brave enough, I can come to you. Okay, yeah. Can you project and I'll repeat your question?
I agree. My question is for really all of you, and it pertains to your reasoning for the homeless, for free money, for why Metro runs the way, it runs. Why, what are your reasons behind free riding? Like, why do you feel like free riding is going to benefit the public, so to speak?
It's a really good question. I won't be able to say all of it, but I'll focus on two. I think one, we are dealing with a car pandemic in Los Angeles. I was just driving over here from Sela, and like, man, there's so many cars out here. Like, it's ridiculous. And I think, like, if you look at the numbers, driverless transit is the most cost-effective way to increase ridership on Metro. And it also reduces vehicle miles traveled by 60 billion miles, which, as y'all can imagine, would have an incredible impact on how congested our roads are, and in a larger perspective, air quality. I'm sure everyone has hiked around and seen kind of the fog out there. So I think if we're trying to find innovative ways to meet the car pandemic, the climate crisis, then we need to make public transportation the first choice. And I think one way of doing that in a bold way is by eliminating the fares. So yeah, I think that's why it would be beneficial.
In a real sense, one of the difficulties for unhoused people to get off their feet is because the over ridiculousness of the policing that they have. Tickets. 3 to 4 times our Black unhoused people are ticketed. And it's important that we understand that. It's real harm that's being done. We may be in a position, if we miss a ticket, that $3 ticket come up to like $500. That becomes when they go into the encampments and they're being swept. They use that preface to target unhoused people and put them in jail. So period, that's why we need to get rid of that, because it's a tool that they use to criminalize unhoused people, Black and brown people. And language is important. We don't use homeless, we use unhoused, houseless, displaced, disconnected, because it is a pejorative that white supremacists use in order to dehumanize. When you dehumanize, you decriminalize. That's another conversation.
Right on. I don't want to get too jargony, so I'll say this very quick. The Metro has an $8.5 billion budget. You know how much they get from the fares? They get about 0.3% of that budget from the actual fares that people put into the box. That means that they just don't get. I would, if this were me and this were my own budget, I would do that to someone that I really hate. Like, please do not come talk to me. I don't want to see you. I'm going to do the most insulting, most pettiest shit ever to you, so that you know that I don't like your ass, right? And so that is why Metro is doing this shit, right? It's not that they don't have money. Everyone's talking about where are we to get money. Y'all spending 60% of your fucking budget on construction. Is this a construction agency or is it a transportation agency, right? And I'll say this, the last thing, because this is the conversation I have with bus drivers. The root of the answer is, which side are you on? How did you get to a point in your mind where the system got you free of charge defending the ass, and more than you defend yourselves, right? You know you can't afford the fares. We know that most of our neighbors can't afford the fares. But you sitting up here, they paying Holly Mitchell $300,000 to defend the fare. How much are they paying you? Right? It's a real question, right? And so we think that we have every right to free public transportation. It's our damn system, and give us our fucking system back.
Question over there. Really quickly, I also think it helps bus operators. I think right now, bus operators are treated very badly by the system, and they have to act as informal fare enforcers. And I think once we remove the fares, working conditions will be better for bus operators as well.
Well, actually, that's what I was going to touch, because I am an operator, and I've been listening. I want to try all three of you. Oscar, what you said about like what did you as far as the free transit? I mean, that sounds great, but are you thinking about the part that it's gonna fall on the drivers? Like all that, the cars off the street, that's good, but that's more drivers at work. We're already getting overworked. We're not getting enough rest, and we have family life on top of that. So I don't think you guys are, I feel as though you are only looking at it from your side, not all the sides of the spectrum.
That's a very valid point, but the question I would pose to you too, I know I've been on some of these public transportation spots where I didn't have the money. And I asked for a courtesy ride and I was completely shamed. And I asked you that those riders that could have just moved on and let me on there, what did they benefit from shaming or throwing me off the bus or not allowing me on the bus? The part of it is that how white supremacy works is they pit each other against each other. They use scarcity index and they use everything in in their power to make sure that it's an us versus them. So in order for us to do the solution, how can we do the solution together in order that you don't become overworked? They create more buses for people to use them freely, and you don't have to worry about being taxed for doing something that they're not going to get paid for anyway.
If I can just add really quickly, I think it's an excellent question. Like I said, I think by eliminating fares, then y'all bus operators will have to enforce fares. And I think that puts you in very like contentious situations where like people start screaming at you and like that's just not what at least I want bus operators to do. I want them to focus on driving, getting people around safely. I think the other thing too is that I think like bus operators, at least people who start off as bus operators, only get paid like $15 or $18.
Now $20
It was just something ridiculous. Like if you're a bus operator, you can also apply to be on life, which is a reduced fare program. And I think that's completely ridiculous. We need to pay bus operators more and have it reflect what y'all are doing. You're doing a critical role in our society, getting people around. And I think from my mind, perilous transit should be something that bus operators support. And we should conjoin it with asking for better working conditions, asking for higher wages, and asking for just the Metro board to treat y'all with more fucking respect. You know what I mean? Like the system is the workers. Like if there was no drivers, if there was no custodial workers, if there was no one upkeeping the system, then we're lost. So that's kind of how I'm thinking about it.
Here's my quick response. There is a great speech by a great man. I know that everyone's heard of him. His name is Malcolm X. And the speech is Message to the Grassroots. And I've been listening to that a lot lately. And more than anything, what he's pushing Black people to do is to figure out how can you break your mind out of this white supremacy framework, right? Because I hear what you're saying, but the system has your mind in such a lock that if public transportation is expanded, somehow my work conditions are going to get worse. And I want to push you to expand yourself to say, fuck that shit. If public transportation is expanded, I demand these things. Where's the drivers' campaign to side with bus riders and to fight for a better public transportation system and better work conditions, right? There's a book that you got to read that Eric Mann, he's going to be on the next panel wrote. It's called Taking on General Motors, and it's about the campaign where Eric and many workers in the GM Van Nuys plant took on GM Van Nuys, right? And forced them to open up keep the plant open for 10 years. This was one of the lost audio plants that were employing Black and Latinx folks with good paying jobs, paying $15 an hour way back in the 1980s. There's a movement right now talking about $15 an hour. Back in 1980, they were getting paid $15 an hour, right? They went into that factory and they organized their asses off. They put their fingers in the face of the actual CEO. They forced him to say, if you don't keep this damn plant open, we are going to open up the biggest boycott you've ever seen. Even though UAW was in the bed with the company, Eric and the New Directions movement was able to organize a whole movement along with folks that actually buy and drive GM cars. They were able to organize one of the largest boycotts, right? And there's a great scene in this film that we have where the CEOs come out of a discussion with Eric and Maxine Waters and Reverend Jesse Jackson and a bunch of folks, right? And they've gone in saying they're going to threaten them with the boycott. And he comes out and he's shaking and he's like, Well, we don't like boycotts. They're not good for business. But if anyone thinks that we don't take them serious, we do. And here's the last thing. I challenge because to be quite frank, I go to the riders all the time and ask them what is their biggest fear on buses, right? They say two things. They say the police and they say the operators. And that says a lot, right? Because I can sit here and say that Metro is divided the operators, and which might be true, but to be quite frank, a lot of the operators aren't that friendly, right? I'm on one of the Facebook groups. There's a lady that was brutalized last week in Philadelphia, 2 quarters. Do you know how many people on that post that were operators that were saying good for them, throw them off the buses, throw their poor asses off the buses, right? We need more solidarity with the operators with bus riders, and both to then take that and bust our minds open and imagine larger than we ever imagined before, because we deserve it.
I know that it's like I'm just again, like I love it, but okay. I do want to let us know that we have another panel, and the next panel is on the exact issue. Y'all already started talking about it. So would it be all right if we can hold the rest of these questions for the second panel? Because then we're going to have our operators here, as well as Eric from Bus Riders Union, so we can get a really in-depth conversation going. Does that sound all right? Okay. So I will start the next panel in 10 minutes at 6:55.
Everybody. I'm the guy with Janet. My name is Eric. If you want to get involved in our campaign or learn more about it, this is the draft letter to people. This is the flyer. And please take one. And if you want to, then come on up and sign up, and we'll call you all and meet you all. And we'd love to have you. So maybe, let's see. I don't know. I'm not good at this. Just sort of.
Yeah. Okay. Let's all settle down. Oh, very good. Well, I just heard word that we have to clarify. This event is not affiliated with LA Metro. I don't work for LA Metro, but we all collectively have a lot of thoughts on how LA Metro should run. And we are the constituency. So I think that we should all be empowered to speak our minds about that.
About here. Say it again. So I took the bus here.
I used some complaints coming from Metro. So tell all your friends. Metro had nothing to do with this, but did cause the problems that led to this.
All right, yeah, and just a reminder that the few operators that we have on this panel are speaking from their own experiences. Nothing that they say is representative of Metro leadership, Metro's political platform. This is their experience as well. So for our second panel, we're going to discuss the importance of building strong labor and community coalitions. I'd like to introduce Eric Mann, the director of the Labor Community Strategy Center and the Bus Riders Union. I have Joseph Wagner, who's a welder and member of the ATU, and Nini Halcrom and Christine DC, who are members of the SMART Union, and they're both operators. To start us off, I'd love to hear more about each of you and your work. So if Eric could start us off.
All right. So, great. Hi, everybody. So my name is Eric Mann, Director of the Labor Community Strategy Center. I want to thank Praxis a lot for creating this. And for you to understand that some of the tension or struggle here is what should happen. You know, it's called a university or society where we want people to debate effectively and to understand choices. Because debate's about life choices. It's not about who's right or wrong. You can think somebody's right, so work with them. But the bus riders union is here to recruit. We're not here to discuss. We're not here to entertain. You know, it's a big evening for us, and we want people to work for us because we're trying to make a revolution. When I was at Cornell, it starts all my books, and I have a new book coming out called I Saw a Revolution with My Own Eyes, The Journey of a Movement Organizer. So when I was at Cornell, I was late 1960, if you remember, there was such a year. It's called the 60s. And the Black students from North Carolina A&T had just had the Greensboro sit-in in February of 1960. So I'm a college freshman, and I'm coming to Cornell, and the students from SNCC are there. And they're asking us to boycott Woolworths because Woolworths had been the site of the first sit-ins where they were denied service. So this young man from SNCC gets up and says, you know, I want you to all help me boycott Woolworths. And I said, great. He says, but the problem with all you white people is you're sitting up at Cornell on your ass, doing nothing. You think going down to help me at Woolworths when I risk my life, and I hate those sandwiches at Woolworths. I wouldn't eat them for a damn thing except the principle of it. But I'm talking about you who haven't done anything with your life, and you got to not just help us with Woolworths, but you got to join the civil rights revolution. And I went, how dare you talk to me like this? I'm here to help you, and you're insulting me. And I was there all night in this conversation with this Black student. And then I said, you sound like an idiot, Eric. I mean, you sound like a white liberal. He's trying to tell you that you got to change. Something has to change big in your life. And he says, who wants to join the civil rights revolution? I woke up that morning, I had a religious conversion. I said, I do. I'm ready. So organizing is about conversion. It's just like church. It's supposed to have an evangelical nature to it. It's not fighting about should the buses be this, or what do you think about that, or who cares? Like Channing said, you go on the bus and you can see in 30 seconds, the society is falling apart at the seats. You see, as a brother was saying about houselessness, I mean, we have houseless members. We fought for night service. I don't know if the brother's still here. We fought for night service precisely because the cutting of night service, that was 15 years ago, was going to be so detrimental to houseless members. So what I'm getting to is we need to call out. The reason we want to call out Pete Buttigieg is because we want to call out the Democratic Party that's the big problem here. So I want to write an article called Donald Trump isn't in hiding, but he's in plain sight in LA. He's disguised himself as a liberal Democrat. And it's the liberal Democrats in LA who have the 10,000 police. It's the liberal Democrats in LA who are kicking everybody off the bus. It's the liberal Democrats in LA who want to go to war with Russia. But they're starving the people in Afghanistan right now. They're starving people in Iran and Iraq. They want to go to war with China. So our country is trying to take over the world, not us. And the actual society is falling apart psychologically, mentally, socially. I mean, you go into an elevator now with people who know each other, like a couple say, so you see this? You see this? You see that? No, I didn't see that. I was looking at that. What the hell were you doing with your phone? You're supposed to be in a relationship. So we think at the strategy center that we're trying to change the world. And since we can't change the world right now, we want to at least get big things that look like they're in the direction of changing the world. So calling out Mayor Pete to come to LA, using UCLA to have a debate between Channing, myself, and Barbara Lott Hollins and the MTA would be a big way to use your institutional power to make something happen. And the last thing I'll hand it over is it's good. A concept was used that I didn't agree with, brother, called vanguardism. I believe in vanguardism. See, I don't believe in self-proclaimed vanguardism. I don't believe the groups that call themselves the Communist Vanguard. I mean, who the hell are you? Just put on your newspaper. But is Black Lives Matter a vanguard or not? They led. Vanguard means who's going to lead and who can lead well. And then give credit where credit is due. Who's led the fight around the buses? The bus riders union. We're the BRU, and this is our fight. Mass transportation is a human right. We want a 50-cent fare and $20 passenger because mass transportation belongs to the masses. And that's before we realize it should be free. But the point I'm getting to is we need more people to take a stand. We need more people to jump out and take a risk. And when you do, if you do it well, whoever started the Me Too movement should get credit for doing it. That's all I'm trying to say. And the last disagreement we had is we're out there talking to the people all day. That's what we do. But if the woman keeps saying, I don't know what to do about the police, and another woman says, the police just shot my son, we're with the woman who says, my police just shot my son, and we got to do something now. If you keep claiming you want to talk to all the conservative people, that's your excuse to not want to do anything.
Thank you so much, Eric. I'd like to pass the mic to the folks who are employed at Metro. And if you could please introduce yourself, talk about your work and some of the issues that you're facing in your workplace. We can start, Joe, and then pass the mic.
My name is Joe Wagner. I'm a mechanic, but I'm speaking from my own point of view. I'm not speaking from the union's point of view. I'm a proud member of my union, ATU 1277. I'm not speaking from a position that I'm speaking from my own point of view, not speaking for, certainly not speaking from the Metro's point of view. So I'm going to have to abstract what I say from the particular and speak more about general. Okay. So I'm a supporter here on campus of the Internationalist Club, which is a Marxist club. I'm sure you both saw that we led a speak out for the free abortion on demand. And in my capacity as a mechanic in the union, I have put forward motions that were public on the union's website. One was in solidarity with another sister ATU local 689. It was on my union's website, which said that we serve the multiracial public of Los Angeles. Okay, I'm not going to read the whole motion. I can pass it around. But the short story is that a ATU local 689 in Washington, D.C. was asked to be complicit in providing a sealed train for white supremacist organizations who were involved in this Unite the Right 2 in Washington, D.C. And the sister in that ATU local, right, opposed being with the Democratic Party mayor and the transit agency that was providing the sealed train for white supremacist organizations. So people who want to see that motion that I passed, also a motion in solidarity with the teachers who went on strike. These are public motions that I got put on, it was a major struggle, put onto the union's website. Now I come here in solidarity with bus operators. So I am super glad that bus operators are here because bus operators are nationwide where the rubber meets the road, literally, right? Bus operators make this city and all major cities in this country run. So as workers, we definitely need to be in solidarity with the riding public. In that regard, I was part of a group called Transport Workers Against Deportations, struggling against the Gestapo type treatment that undocumented workers are suffering under Democratic Party. Look, Obama was a deporter in chief, and Trump's vile, open white supremacy just followed on the heels of Obama's deportation regime. Biden, in fact, well over 1 million deportations and running. So as workers, we need to be in solidarity with undocumented workers, with unhoused people, with oppressed communities. Black oppression is very real in the city, and also the oppression of undocumented workers. So I'm here to be advocate nationwide for free public transit as a way to unite operators, mechanics, the riding public. And I want people to look back to the 1934 general strikes. There were 3 major general strikes that happened in 1934. One in Toledo, Ohio, where the unions in Toledo, led by Musty, united with unemployed workers, right? Where in Minneapolis, there was a major general strike that put the Teamsters on the map, that united workers, and it transformed the Teamsters Union from a lily white little craft union, right? It was all divided up, and organized everybody in that city. It was a major general strike, put Native American workers in key leadership position in that viciously racist town. And they fought against the white supremacist employer organizations. And also the 1934 general strike in San Francisco that united undocumented workers with, citizens. But look, all 3 of these major victorious strikes in 1934 weren't looking to speak truth to power to politicians, Democrat or Republican. They weren't trying to see government mediators as somehow neutral arbiters. No, and they didn't. They organized solidarity strikes, right, that were based on uniting workers, unemployed, and oppressed populations. We need to look back to that. The problem is the radicals have been purged from the unions. And so what we have major unions all over the city, what we have are Democratic pro-capitalist union leaders. And so as workers, as radical workers, we have to fight against the idea that the pie is baked, okay? Because generally speaking, trade union consciousness is a variant of bourgeois consciousness. In that, we see the pie is baked. And so in seeing the pie is baked, we as workers are forced to be pitted against the unhoused, the unemployed, the undocumented, against people who are especially oppressed. I understand that my natural ally is my Black, my Mexican workmate and unemployed, and not the Democratic Party that are the bosses of the racist killer cops in these major cities. So, as an alternative to the marauding cops on these platforms and buses, militant unionists should be for safety ambassadors on buses and train stations. I'm speaking generally. I'm not talking about any specific. Okay, but I like to put forward. Not only agree completely with what the sister put forward in Portland, but after a white supremacist murdered two brothers that stood up to defend a Black woman and a Muslim woman on a train, on a Mack train, the leader of this union said, we don't want more cops. We want our safety ambassadors. That means that you have imagination. She looked at her skin and said, I understand that modern cops are like slave patrol of the past, right? That's what has happened, is that the slave patrol has become the modern genre, the modern police, right? Constable on patrol, right? Okay, right. So the Democratic Party is not a solution. Obviously, the Republicans are not a solution. I will hand it over to the operator.
Hi, everyone. I'm Mimi. I've been an operator for 6 years. I started my career with Metro. I am ending my career with Metro. I'm done. I cannot wait for them to get this together with the public and the operators. I don't have the type of time that it's going to take. But as far as my experiences with the company, I've had good and bad experiences. I've had mostly bad. I am a person who mostly work owl shifts, which is nights. So 7 to 7 a.m. So that's what I work. So I dealt with the people that nobody else wanted to deal with. And sometimes they're cool. They just ride, they know how it works, you know, they get off, they get on, and that's fine. And you got the ones that's not cool. The ones that want to get on and urinate on the bus. The ones that want to get on and pull their pants down and start touching on themselves. You have things like that going on constantly. And you have a lot of women that are out here on their own. And we definitely need to figure out what is it going to take to get us to where we don't have to deal with that, because a lot of the public, we heard earlier, the public saying that, you know, the operators have attitude and they're not very good with their customer service. But at that point in the day, you don't know what happened before, you know, you got to the bus with, you know, from that point. We don't know what we went through, how many times we'll have to call in for help that doesn't come. I definitely need to make sure that is clear. When we do have problems and we call for help, it takes forever. And by then we would either figure it out on our own or just went with the flow, just go with the flow by then. So, I mean, other than that, I'm not gonna hold you too long. That's all I have to say.
My name is Christine. I've been driving for Metro for over 5 years now. I have moved from so many different divisions. I think I've counted 100 lines that I know. And it's horrible. But I'm your friendly neighborhood bus driver. Okay. Socially awkward. So I take control of the conversation, yeah? Okay, you see me, right? You know, we have very dangerous situations. And if it wasn't for my sense of humor, I wouldn't have made it. Okay. I just need you guys to know that, like they're saying, there's a lot of situations that happen to us and we are upset. In training, they told us about the man in the wheelchair that cuts you out when you say good morning. I met him twice. I want to kick him in the chest. Right? So I'm doing great. I'm fine. But, you know, everyone doesn't have that same peachy disposition that I have. So it's kind of hard to be mad at the bus driver, you know, because a lot of us don't know how to act. If it's the 30th person who's cussed us out after we say good morning, I don't know what you expect from me. Right? Okay. We try our best out here. We really do. And all we really do is our job. And it is the craziest thing to tell someone who wears a uniform that they don't want to do their job today. They put it on. They want to do it. They're there. They can't. Right? I don't know if any of you have ever been told that. Oh, you must not want to do your job. I'm here, baby. I want to do it. Thank you. So it's just really hard. I just want to let that be known. It's very dangerous. You know, just walking outside of your house is the most dangerous thing you've ever had to do, right? We drive a bus, it's 11 feet wide? 12? Right? 8 feet wide, right? Your car is what, 6? Okay, cool. I got 100 people back here. I gotta keep it together. Just understand that our jobs are very hard. I know I make it look easy. You know, so I'll just leave it at that. We can get going.
Amazing introductions for everybody. Really appreciate your perspective. So we talked a lot about potential problems, potential or very real issues that operators face every day. So this first question is to the operators. How do you think those issues that you're facing can be resolved?
To all of us, right?
Yes.
I think when people start to understand their jobs, right? Your job as the passenger is to get on the bus and go where you're going. My job as the driver or the operator is to get you there. Okay, I was a different type of bus driver. You didn't have the fare. Okay, baby, are you gonna stand there? Or are you gonna get on? Yeah? Like, let's go. Let's hurry up and go. My job isn't to sit here and talk to you about why you don't have it. My job is to get you there. So you're gonna stand at my door, we're gonna go. Right? I had zero tolerance for disrespect. And a lot of times they feel like they have to disrespect you in order to get on the bus. That's not the fare. That's not how you take your fare. You just say, good morning, I don't have a fare. Come on, let's go. Okay, I literally had a man, excuse my French. He said, bitch, I ain't got the fare. I said, bitch, I ain't asking for that. And he laughed, and people behind him laughed, and I was like, come on, all of y'all need to hurry up. But when people realize what their job is to get on the bus, and my job is to drive it, I think we would have a lot easier of a time, whether you paid the fare or not. You asked.
Oh, we all answer. I mean, I feel like I'm important to say. That's pretty just of it. Repeat the question one more time.
Sure. How do you think the issues that you're facing in the workplace can be resolved? And this is a question for all people.
Okay, so I have an idea. And this is just me. I've seen a bus somewhere in some other state somewhere where they basically make the front of the bus where the yellow line is into a cubicle. And it's like a little door, you go through, help whoever you need to help, and you go back, you focus on your job. I honestly think that might be a good idea. You guys want free fare anyway, so just open the back door, y'all hop on, let's roll. I think that might be a good solution, but that's just me. Other than that, all I can say is I don't understand where the problem will come from in the first place. Because you have a destination, that's the point of you being on the bus. You can't get there if we're going back and forth with each other. I can guarantee you I do not move my bus if I'm under distress. I will not drive, because not only do I have my life in my hands, but I have your life in my hands. I have people's kids' life in my hands. Then I have to worry about the lives of the people walking down the street and driving alongside of me. So the last thing I want to do is go back and forth with you. I only want to take you to where you have to go. I promise you that. That's all I want to do. And I'm gonna leave it at that.
More than you think, the bus riders union is completely on the side of ours. And let me explain something. We have fought for the drivers, especially Black women drivers, if I can say, and Black men drivers, because but we feel that the transit union sold us out, and I want to explain. You have a very hard job. And I am really sorry, because what you're inheriting is a country that's falling apart at the seams. See, when I was starting to work 25 years ago on the buses, it wasn't that bad for the drivers. I'm not saying it was good, but there were more sane people and less crazy people. There were more people that had a job than didn't have a job. There were people where if there was a problem on the bus, a lot of times the riders would solve it. So, the riders would say, sit down, shut up, and leave the driver alone, right? But that's changed, and I know that's changed. So the first thing I want to say is that when we go on the bus, the first thing that the bus riders union organizer does is speak to the operator. If you know that. Hey, I'm Eric. How you doing? Good. What's going on the bus today? I'm here to talk to people about lower fares. I'm here to talk about racism. almost all the drivers were very friendly and would say, good, do your job. That's not, so what went wrong? Well, what is going wrong? The first thing is that the MTA is allowing our society is falling apart, and the MTA does not care about drivers or riders. So, but here's the problem. Explain it. We have argued for on-bus conductors. I've said all along, you know, when you're on the weight train, conductor comes up and says, "Are you happy today? Would you like some alcohol? Would you like to go to the bar car? You're eating a sandwich." I say, "Are you enjoying your sandwich?" Now, in the MTA, you can get arrested for having a sandwich, arrested having feet on the ground, arrested from drinking. I mean, the person is just a bag, you know, with a little thing in it. You can be arrested for almost anything, which is why we call it the black codes, including loitering, which just means sitting there doing nothing, which is what they first did with the slaves. So, so where do we go from here? We're going to talk more. That's number one. Number two, we actively work for the bus drivers' strike, supported it. That was back, I don't know what year, but about 2000. It was devastating for our members, right? I mean, they have no car, they have nothing. But we said, no, we got to sacrifice for the drivers because they're being pushed out, you know, went through all those things. When I would speak at the rallies, the drivers were going, BRU, BRU, we love the BRU. But then after the strike, when the MTA started to raise the fare, we said to the drivers, we need your help. And the union said, no, I can't, because frankly, if we're going to get a higher wage, I got to get, you know, I can't oppose the fare increase. And we said, wait a minute, you got billions and billions of dollars, but secondly, we just supported your strike with people that couldn't even had to walk to work. The union at the top was corrupted. So we got to get drivers to say, stop MTA attacks on Black passengers. We don't want you arresting people on my bus. We don't want citations on my bus. What we want is a civilian person who can keep some order here while I'm driving the bus. So I don't have to be a disciplinarian. On the other hand, I will not call the police on people. Now, I'm going to stop here because another round, but I totally get it. People urinating on the, I mean, you're trying to have a good job. But I'm telling you, the MTA is driving the rioters into a point of desperation. And some of the operators are becoming very close to the police. And instead of going to the MTA and saying, I want you to stop the fare collection, stop the attacks, they are saying, I don't know what to do, get some cops in here. And they testify at the MTA to that degree. And you all sound nice. I'd like to ride your bus.
Well, let's face it, there's a essential worker shortage, quote unquote, right? Bus operators nationwide are essential workers. So why is there an essential worker shortage? And how do we define gentrification? Gentrification is when working people collectively cannot afford the rent. They're caught in a vice between high rents and low wages. So the cut in service, bus service, is a product of not an operator shortage, but a lack of wages nationwide. And the inflation has cut workers to the bone. And so we see a rise in unhoused people, right? Because so working people are under a full frontal assault. And generally speaking, in the major cities, the privatizers, the attackers, the preferred party of cutbacks. In the words of the Democratic Party in major cities, they say, "Oh, boss, they'll take it from me." We need class struggle leadership in the unions and a class struggle approach to fighting against gentrification. And that means a unity of workers and oppressed people's transit users and transit workers.
Thank you.
Can I just say one sentence?
You got one sentence.
It would mean a lot if Black drivers could come to the MTA and work with Channing to say, we got a problem on the bus. We do not want this policed. You have created chaos here. And 50% of the people you're arresting are Black. That homeless brother, houseless brother said, in the middle of the night, you're arresting people. We drivers oppose all these arrests. And we do want civilian people, like the VRU was saying. We have not gotten that level of support. It would mean a lot. Good.
Thank you. Yeah, I really want to call out that it seems like, with essential workers, frontline workers, our society has really failed us in many ways, and you're dealing with those issues.
That's right.
Because we don't have public housing, we don't have the necessary services for folks so that they can get the help that they need. Because why are we living in a society where someone needs to use the bus as shelter? Everyone should have shelter, and it feels very unfair to work with that. But I know that we have dinner outside after, and y'all probably want to eat. I can tell the energy's getting kind of low. So I'm going to close it out with one last question, and then the audience, if y'all have questions, you'll have a chance to talk as well. But given all that you have said, in your experience, what is necessary to build a strong coalition between labor unions, the workers, and transit riders? And I would love to hear from you all first. Okay, so if the union and the drivers are going to come together, the union leaders need to stop being friends with the managers. Stay out of the manager's office, the supervisor's office, and you need to be mingling and talking to us, because we're the people that you're supposed to be defending. And since you're so worried about being friends with them, you're not defending us how you should when things are coming about for disciplinary action. I got hit with a charge that I did not deserve, and I could have definitely pleaded my own case in Metro Court had I was allowed to, because my union rep did not, he didn't do his job, and I would like a refund. Because he did not do his job. So that's my opinion. When it comes to the union, I've had some very sketchy situations, but the last situation that I had to say nothing. He just came in, he was like, bam, 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 and then we left. And I was confused. And they were like, yeah, we're gonna send you a letter in 2 weeks. I never got the letter, I got a phone call, and I was like, yeah, you good, girl. I was like, what happened? Like, I felt like they had a conversation around me, and I was just there, She lied. That's what happened, okay? She lied, and it was like she did what she was supposed to do, so it was okay. So the union is sketchy. I definitely agree. They work when they feel like it. I don't know if they like me that day. Like, I really don't know what happened, okay? I just feel like we need to have more of a conversation with everyone without being defensive,
combative.
Because it's really hard, if you're reacting, you're not listening. That sort of vibe, and they're all over Metro, like all over. Pick a corner, it's there. So just a better conversation without pointing fingers. I think that would be like a really good adjustment.
So I want to end with this. I mean, certainly when somebody says food is outside, it's hard, to have a revolutionary perspective when people are going, what kind of food? Okay, and I'm with you, so I'll be with you. I want to urge, and I hope it's okay, especially Black and Latinx, very welcome for this audience. to come to the Strategy and Soul. It's open to everybody, by the way. But to come to our Strategy and Soul Movement Center at 3546 Martin Luther King. And I want to thank Keenan and the students who came over and spent 2 hours with us, because we have a beautiful bookstore there, right? We have a film theater. We say it's a place for, we keep working their arts, a place for repair, a place for refuge, a place for revitalization, a place for revolution and resistance. But we need more people like us sitting around with no anything, talking to them. And that's talking to just because what we're seeing as a structure is seriously, capitalism is in crisis. The Democratic Party is in crisis. The trade unions are in crisis, and they're not defending their members. Not all, but a lot of them are in debt with the company, is what these two sisters were saying. So you go in and pay your dues, and everybody's saying, congratulations to the Amazon workers, and I wish them all the best. But 10 years later, what's that union going to be like if there's not a union reform? I'm telling you that the unions become corrupted pretty quickly. So we are trying to build a movement. The biggest thing we need you to do is come see a film, come buy a book, put on a yellow shirt, and let's walk out and talk to bus riders and bus drivers. And that's what we'd like you to do. If you're interested, go see Channing. And I want to thank one more thing. I want to thank Praxis. This is a great conversation. This is getting people to engage ideas, to listen to each other. I learned more about the drivers today. I learned more about houseless people. And I hope you learn more about the bus riders union and the kind of changes that we're trying to make in this society. But this has been a really beautiful evening, and thank you.
So somebody quoted Malcolm X, and I think it's appropriate, just when Malcolm was talking about the Black struggle. I think it also applies more generally to the working class struggle. When Malcolm said, we put the Democrats first and they put us last. He was speaking particularly about Black oppression. And I think it does aptly apply to the workers' struggle also. We have at base a political crisis within labor nationally, internationally, in that the modern trade union draws closer and closer to the state in the imperialist center, right? And drawing closer and closer to the state, what is the organization that binds the worker to the state power? And mainly, it's not the openly racist Republican Party. In the major cities, it is the Democratic Party. It is that fox that Malcolm was talking about that we let in to the chicken coop. So if we want to imagine a different type of society, if we want to look beyond capitalism, why would we be looking at the oldest capitalist party on the planet, the Democratic Party that came out of the slaveocracy? Working people need their own political party. We need to fight, working people need to struggle in defense of all the oppressed, and we need a class struggle strategy to liberate all the oppressed and put the workers in power. That is looking beyond capitalism to a socialist future.
I could tell the energy is at like a 2.5, but I want to open up the floor. Does anyone have any questions? Yes, go ahead.
I have a question. I want to thank you all for your time, and I'm also learning a lot. But I can't help but notice that really I have a very disproportionate number of women who spoke today. And I just wanted to ask what everyone thinks about sort of the role of gender and also perceptions of safety and how that might change or affect some of the issues we talked about today. And I also, for disclosure, I'm co-chair of the WTF, so of WTF with the transportation.
Sure. So the question was, what's the role of women in transportation and how they interact with issues of safety?
As riders, operators.
Okay, as riders and operators.
So the first division that I started at, it was, I appreciated being there because all of the supervisors were women. right? So that was the very first division that I went to. I was shocked because I didn't know what I was walking into, but they were all Black women. And I was just like, yeah. Yeah, this is great. But it was like being in high school, you know, the cool girls were over there, the short girls were over there. The ones with the wigs were over there, you know, right? And I was just like trying to figure out where I fit, but I enjoyed seeing it, right? Somebody told me to put my big girl panties on once, and I was just like, "Oh, you serious? I can do that?" Like, I didn't know. I was trying to be the nice bus driver, yeah. And then you know, people were talking to me very strange, and I said, "Oh, you have to be crazy but crazy. I'm crazy, yeah, right?" And that was kind of like my defense mechanism. And then after about spending 2.5 years there, I got equalized. They pushed me out. They kicked me out. I was like, oh no. And then I went somewhere where they were all men, and I was just like, what is this? Oh, they don't care about nothing. It was just a different thing. So Metro does have a lot of women in power that are doing things. I could not get to them today, but you know what I'm just saying? They out there. And they do care. A lot of times when there's something going on, you say it quietly. She's like, okay, I'm gonna take you over here. You're gonna talk to this person, call this number. It's all about safety, depending on who you talk to. Yeah? Okay. Okay.
Okay, so for me with safety, I've had some problems because like I said, I work at night. I've had issues where I've needed cops or I was worried about my own safety. So I guess what I've learned, I'll just give you a certain line on the 207 line, Western, that I did that all night. And it's rough. That's why she just did that. It's very rough. So I learned that, yeah, sometimes people try to be crazy or whatever, but they respect you when you stand your ground. You don't have to be disrespectful. You don't have to threaten them, but you can be assertive and let them know, like, listen, I'm not going to stand for this. This is not what we on today. Where are you trying to go so we can get there? And 9 times out of 10, I won't even say 9. A good time, maybe, you know, you get lucky, and they'll be like, okay, let me calm down. Let me chill. You know, I had a regular reoccurring people getting on. They acting like they don't know how to act. But then when I let them know I'm not on that time today, they like, all right, I got it, operator, I got it, you know? So sometimes with safety, like for me, like I said, for safety for me, I learned that when to voice my assertiveness and when not to. You have to learn how to read the room and read the person you're dealing with. Thank you for those answers. I really appreciate that. And I know that like issues of race and class and gender all come together in this conversation because even, you know, as women of color, putting myself in that, you know, like we deal with issues of safety differently than a white woman would. And I think that's really important for us to consider and like we're perceived differently. So I really appreciate you speaking to that. Eric. You got like 2 sentences.
Well, I mean, you keep saying people, I'm just trying to raise the issue of gender and I care a lot about it. And we keep saying people are tired, and I just want to answer the question. The strategy center is, I think, is in many ways a multiracial women's liberation organization as well, because it's an integrated view we have. For instance, 60% of the people on the buses are women, and a lot of our members are women and Latino women and Black women. We have been trying to say we've been aware of sexual harassment on the bus forever. And we've had our own members have to go with other women, you know, to work, for instance, to find out what's going to go on. We've consistently said to the MTA when they say, well, there's sexual harassment on the buses. We say, come on, of course there is in our society. So how about reducing the overcrowding as just one thing? How about running more buses? Because part of it is all this crowding. Secondly, what?
I said, hold on. No.
And secondly, why not have monitors on the bus instead of police so that if there are real issues, those can be solved. So I think that you have undocumented women on the bus who walk there and because of fare collection are going to get off the bus and not use the bus. So all I'm trying to say is that the driver's agenda, the riders are very gendered, very, very low income women. And that's a big part of the problem, how the MTA treats it.
So, Shirley Block of ATU 757, instead of asking for more police, she, in the face of this, racist and sexist attack on the MAC train, she called for safety ambassadors who were union members and not asking for more marauding police that would discourage people from riding public transit. So I want people to look at this statement that Shirley Block from ATU 757 in Portland made in 2017 in the face of this sexist and white supremacist attack, and not calling for more cops, but safety ambassadors that are union members. That used to, in some locations, the union should fight for 2 operators of trains and buses, right?
All right. I'm gonna cut it because everyone is like looking to eat, but please continue the conversation outside. Some of our panelists will be joining us. We'll have tacos and grab some water on the way out. Thank you all so much.